Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Ammar Younas. I am CEO of IMO Innovation Consultants. I am also a PhD candidate at School of Humanities, University of Chinese Academy of Sciences in Beijing, China. Currently, I am pursuing my PhD in Philosophy of Science and Technology. The topic of this lecture is to elaborate the Confucius message and Confucius underline philosophy, which is a base for Chinese policy towards its ethnic minorities. Another purpose of this presentation is to explain that why Confucius thought is relevant for contemporary China. I have tried to explore a couple of dimensions, and by using different examples I have tried to elaborate how Confucius is still relevant when we want to explore the humanistic touch of Chinese policy towards its different ethnic minority groups. So if I talk about the overview of this lecture, first I will talk a little bit about Confucius and the Confucianism. Then I will talk about the ethnic minorities in China. Then we will see the social cohesion among different ethnic groups inside China. And then I will start talking about the Confucius message for harmony, and also try to explore that what is the base of Chinese policy towards its different ethnic minorities and how much Confucius thought has influenced on it. And finally, we will discuss the criticism, because you know that a lot of criticism is going on that China is mistreating its minorities. And definitely we will try to counter this criticism as well. And then we will conclude our lecture. So first of all, I would like to talk a little bit about Confucius, that who was Confucius. Actually, it is worth to mention that Confucius has no meaning in Chinese. Confucius was the name given to this person, which Chinese know as Kongchui. The Confucius name was given by Christian missionaries who later came to China, and the Confucius itself by Chinese is known as Confuzi or Master Kong. And there is no doubt that he was one of the greatest philosophers of our history, and one of the biggest philosophers in China. And I am not mistaken if I say that he is one of the most influential contemporary philosophers as well. So if we talk about Western philosophy, we find the philosophers from the same period, like pre-Socratic or Socratic or immediate post-Socratic philosophers. And Confucius also belonged to the period of Socrates, and he was the founder of philosophy called as Confucianism. Now here many people, they label Confucianism as a religion, but if we investigate the Confucianism through the prism of religious studies or if we try to categorize Confucianism as a religion, we realize that Confucianism is not a religion per se, because it absent number of generalized ideas which we usually observe in other religions, such as there is no holy book, or there is no concept of afterlife. So it is very difficult to say that Confucianism is a religion, but Confucianism is a philosophy, and there is no doubt about it. So Confucianism is not something which is famous, or about which people are very much emotionally attached only in China, but we can see that Confucianism has spread its tentacles in a number of other areas, and Korea, Japan, and Vietnam are some of the famous examples where people are very much influenced by the Confucius philosophy. So if we talk about the early years of the Confucius, Confucius was born in 551 BC. He belonged to a poor family, and he was born in a city which is nowadays called as Chufu. It is in the Shandong province of China. So on the left you can see a picture. Uh, this is me standing in Chufu. I had the honor of teaching in this school in Chufu. I actually visited the Chufu for a Confucius studies program, and I visited this school and I gave a couple of lectures to the kids, because I wanted to teach on the land of one of the greatest teachers, which is Confucius. So still there are many other areas which can be recognized with the reference of Confucius, but Chufu is very famous since it was the birthplace of China, and there are a number of historic places such as Confucius temple and Kong family mansion. These are actually the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and a lot of tourists visit these places in Chufu. So the Confucius influence later spread in first of all neighboring countries, and later on all over the world. And the Chinese literate culture has exerted a profound influence on spiritual and political life. The Confucianism, and we can see the elements of Confucianism and Confucius thought in all the areas of Chinese societies, no matter it is government or education or the family system. But not only the China, but many other neighboring nations have incorporated Confucius thought in their day-to-day lives. If we talk about Confucius family, uh, at present it is the 80th generation of Confucius. There are so many people who recognize themselves as the member of Kong family, and in fact on the right you can see a picture. This lady who is teaching me the Hanzi, the Chinese characters, she belongs to the Kong family, and Kong family has spread all over the China. And if a lady is married to a person from a Kong family, she also starts recognizing herself as a member of Kong family. So Confucius said that it is rare for a person who is filially pious to his parents and older siblings to be inclined to rebel against his superiors. So Confucius emphasized on the importance of family, and he actually elaborated in detail the relationships such as father and son and husband and wife and brother and brother which are in our families. So he elaborated them in detail. While one's parents were alive, serving them is a ritually proper way, and after one parents died, burying them and sacrificing to them is a ritually proper way. So this is what Confucius said about the parents, and he emphasized a lot on a son's relation with his father. He even said that if your father steals a sheep, you should support your father, and it is a controversial topic in Confucius philosophy, and many Confucius scholars have given different explanations that why Confucius said this. And one of the explanation is that he actually meant that if your father steals a sheep, you should support him by teaching him, or a son can also intervene if he thinks that someone in the family is doing something wrong. So in this dimension, many interpretation you can see. But Confucius didn't write anything by himself like Socrates in West. The Confucius thought or the knowledge or the Confucius literature which has delivered to us is actually written by his disciples. So Confucius also himself never claimed that he was an original thinker. He actually called himself as a transmitter of the knowledge. And there are a number of Confucius disciples. Some people say that, some sources tell us that there are around 3,000 disciples who directly got knowledge from Confucius, or who were attending the Confucius classes. But there are 72 Confucius disciples who became famous because they later appear in Confucius writings, or they were the people who actually wrote about Confucius and Confucianism. And some of these famous disciples are Zigong, who was a businessman, and Zaiju, who was a very famous orator, and actually he was the person who contested the Confucius about his thoughts related to one's relation with his father, because Confucius said that if your father dies, you should mourn for 3 years, and Zaizu said that 3 years are too long, we should shorten this period, and Confucius did not agree with Zaizu. And then we have Yan Hui. So these are the famous disciples of the Confucius, and the Confucius work is delivered to us through his disciples. One of the famous Confucius work is Analects. This is a combination of Confucius sayings and what his disciples wrote about him. There are different versions available, and some of them contains 20 books. And everything what we know about Confucius is mentioned in this collection. And he famously said that he who knows and knows that he knows is a wise man. Follow him. He who knows not and knows not that he knows not is a fool. Shun him. So the similar thoughts we can find in other philosophical traditions. For example, we know that Socrates famously said the similar saying that I know that I know nothing, and you don't know that you don't know. So both of these quotations from the same historic period resembles with each other. But Confucius talked about bringing order to the society. The goal of the Confucius was to bring peace and order in the China, because that was the China which was chaotic, and different rulers from different parts of the China were fighting against each other. So he very much wanted to bring peace in the society. And Confucius famously said, actually this quotation is sometimes labeled as a saying by an Indian philosopher, but actually it appears in Confucius work, in Confucius writings. He said that when there is righteousness in the heart, there is beauty in the character, and when there is beauty in the character, there is harmony in the home. When there is harmony in the home, there is order in the nation, and when there is order in the nation, there is peace of the world. So as per the Confucius, the peace of the world is related to righteousness is in one's heart. That's why he influenced a lot on the later generations, which took lesson from the Confucius thought or the Confucius sayings, and emphasized on the importance of individual purification in terms of their relationship with other human being. Confucius believed that if people could behave correctly towards one another, peace would come. So if individuals are righteous in their attitude towards others and towards themselves, starting from their family member, ultimately we can achieve the peace of the world. So the Confucius thought that people should know their place in life and society. They should respect people above and below them. So he mentioned five relationships: the relationship between ruler and ruled, father and son, husband and wife, older brother and younger brother, and friend and friend. So he categorized different types of relationships, and he influenced on the relationship of these five categories. And throughout the Confucius literature, we can find that how these relationships has been articulated. Now we will come towards the Chinese ethnic minorities, and the question is that which Chinese nationality has the most population in China, and then how many ethnic minorities are there in China. So the answer to the first question is that the Han Chinese are the single most largest ethnic group in China, and there are 56 official ethnic groups. So in total there are 1.4 billion people in China, and Han Chinese make 91% of these 1.4 billion, and the remaining 55 ethnic minorities, they are 9%, but still these 9% are able to maintain their own traditions and customs. So the Chinese government label these Chinese minorities or China as a whole as a big Chinese family, and officially China is recognized as a multi-ethnic country with 56 nationalities, which Chinese often label as 56 flowers. So if we talk about the Han Chinese are the ethnic groups native to China and the largest single ethnic group in the world. They are also the dominant ethnic group of Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. There are about 1.5 billion Han people in the world, and they are about 19% of the global population. On the right side, you can see some pictures. I have taken this picture myself in Beijing. In Beijing, there is a Muslim mosque which is called as New Jai Mosque, which is one of the oldest mosques in China. And if you look at the architecture, this architecture is not the Muslim architecture, it is the Han architecture. So from here, I have a personal opinion that these were not the Hans which were influencing the incomers, but the minorities or the migrants were willingly adopting the Han culture or Han architecture. Maybe it was one of the strategy of the migrants to be socially attached to the native population, or it was a mechanism of gaining the sympathies of the local population. So anyhow, we can see that the influence of Han people on the Chinese minorities is not new. If we look at this map, we can see that the dark green color is the Han population concentrated mostly in east of the China, and the ethnic minorities, they are mostly located in the west of China. So Hans are not only famous because they are larger population of China, or they are more in number in the world. But if we talk about versatility, Hans are very diverse from east to west, north to south. When it comes to the clothing and food and lifestyle, the ethnic group Han demonstrate a huge diversity. If we take only food among the Han people is very diverse. On the right side, this is the famous Peking duck in the Wanfujing Street in Beijing, which is the famous food of the Beijing. And I recommend you to visit this place if you go to China. And the food at one part of China is very, how to say, is not spicy at all, but on the other part of the China it is very spicy, but still prepared by the Han people. So versatility is one of the feature of Han people. And the second thing is antiquity. It is one of the antique ethnic groups, like Jews who have unbroken history and they have preserved it. The Chinese, Han Chinese, can also claim that they are one of the antique ethnic groups who have preserved their history. Another important ethnic group is Hui people or Hui people. Many people outside of the China think that Uyghurs are the only Muslim ethnic group residing in China. But Hui is also an important Muslim ethnic group. These people, they are a combination of different races, but they recognize themselves as a Hui people. So they mostly look like East Asian, and they are spread all over the China. According to the 2001 census, China is home to approximately 20 million Hui people, the majority of whom are Chinese-speaking practitioners of Islam. Through, though some may practice other religion, but majority practice Islam. The 110,000 Dungan people of Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan are also considered part of the Hui ethnic group. So, if we talk about Islam in China, Uyghurs are not the only Muslim group. We can see that the Hui, which are a huge population of 20 million, also practice Islam. This is me in the Yunnan Province, which borders with three important countries in the south of China, and it has 25 ethnic minorities, and Hui people also uh, live there. One of the famous ethnic groups in Yunnan. And if you go there, you will feel that there is social cohesion among the people because they are enjoying the same facilities undiscriminately. And in this school, when I visited this school, I met with different children from different ethnic minorities. And similarly, I saw the diversity among the teachers. So different minority groups were living with each other peacefully, I would say. And they were very proud on this diversity in their region. If we talk about influence of the Confucius on policymakers, before the Confucius, the leadership was inherited and there was no merit system, but the recruitment of bureaucracy on merit or the civil servants were started in post-Confucius period. So at present as well, we can find that bureaucracy or civil servants in China are very much influenced by the Confucius thought. And if we talk about Chinese philosophy and Chinese ethnic minority policy, the Confucius said that when the wind blows, the grass bends. The wind blow, the grass bends is pretty much obvious in terms of Chinese ethnic minority policy. The Confucius said, let the people with administrative injunctions and put them in their place with penal law. And they will avoid punishments but will be without a sense of shame. Lead them with excellence and put them in their place through roles and rituals practices. And in addition to developing a sense of shame, they will order themselves harmoniously. So basically, in this quotation, Confucius is giving an underlying philosophy of managing the populates, that those who are not in harmony with others should be punished, and administrative justice should be there, and if required you should name and shame them or even punish them. But the greater peace is more important than individual individual's happiness if we talk in terms of bringing order to the society. The dominant framework in which Confucius scholars have dealt with the question of minority is the Shia Doctrine. So Shia Doctrine, many Chinese scholars don't talk much about it because Yi itself is a bad connotation for referring the minorities, but many Confucius scholars proudly mention the relationship between Yi and Shia. Shia actually the majority Han people, and ye are the minorities. Confucius actually talked about relationship between ruler uh, and the people who belong to the minority. So Confucian obedience involves minority groups conforming to Confucian norms, maintaining unity and correct relations. Their coexistence is peacefully possible when they follow by minority the principles or norms. Confucius expected that he would not disrupt Shia means minority should not disturb majority. Manicus, who was also a famous Confucius scholar, held the view that Shia could cultivate Yi but not the other way around, that it is not possible for minorities to cultivate majority Han. But Hao Jin, a Confucius scholar during Yunnan dynasty, interpreted that Yi can rule China if it follows Confucianism. So for him, the Confucius thoughts are more important no matter they are practiced by the Yi or Xia. Whoever follows the Confucius teaching has authority to rule the China. Anyone committed to Confucianism, regardless of their ethnic background, can be a political ruler over China. And this interpretation of Confucian Shia Doctrine transcended Confucianism beyond Chinese Han. If we talk about criticism on Chinese ethnic minority policy, there are a number of scholars who are expressively writing, and you can find a number of documentaries on YouTube in which mm, it has been demonstrated that China is persecuting its minorities, especially the Uyghur people. On the right side, you can see a picture. I took this picture in the Xinhua Art Museum when I was studying there. When I looked at this picture, I felt that this lady in the picture belongs to my village in Pakistan. Without reading description, it felt that as it is from my own house or from my own area. But when I read the description, I realized that it is a Xinjiang girl during the harvest of grapes. But the dressing, the posture, everything looks like a Punjabi Pakistani girl. So I mean that when you look something, it can be pretty much different from what the reality is. So Confucius recommended that the diverse minorities should merge into a unified harmony and coexist peacefully in mutual respect and interdependence. This is very much abundant from the Chinese new constitutional amendment, in which for the very first time China is labeled as People's Socialistic Republic. And it is expected that all the people in China should live in cohesion and interdependence. If we talk about the criticism, a counter quotation can be given from the Confucius saying that before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig two graves, Confucius said. So if people think that China is persecuting some minorities, I think that it is not. And if it is persecuting, it is digging two graves, one for the minorities and one for itself. Because this is something which Confucius has told us already. I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. So many things which Chinese are experiencing or Chinese government is experiencing is something which is not being experienced by anyone else. So they are in more better position to take decisions on spot when it comes to the treatment of their own populates. And as we saw earlier that China is a huge population, 1.4 billion people, and individual freedom is an important thing, but when it comes to compromising on the freedom or the rights of majority in the population of 1.4 billion, the government should be very conscious and take decision very carefully. So I personally think that the people who are actually administrating this big population are in more better position to do the policy making for themselves. In counter criticism, I would present this picture, and this picture is from Sanya, which is also in south of China, in the city of Dongfang. I was attending a youth assembly, and this is a performance on stage. You can see that these ladies are beating this boy. If you don't see the picture, or if you listen the story, that you saw that some girls were beating a boy, or if you don't know the context, which I'm going to tell you, that this was a performance, a dance performance in which ladies are enjoying who are beating, or the boy who is being beaten is enjoying because he is also entertaining the others. Many people will misinterpret it. Many people will think that these people are beating this innocent boy, but if someone tells you that this is a dance performance and both of them they are acting, or both of them they are trying to amuse the audience, many things will be clear. So Confucius said that everything has its beauty, but not everyone sees it. It was very much possible for Han Chinese to completely ignore the ethnic sentiments, but we see in number of official representations that the Han Chinese take proud of their ethnic diversity in China. And one of the things I mentioned earlier, that they call 56 minorities as 56 flowers in China. So the counter criticism is that the people at ground are in a better position to judge or to make policies based on different experiences. And if we talk about the mistreatment of individual minorities, I think that Confucius' stance is very clear, and Confucius has warned at a number of places that one should not mistreat the people in minorities and try to live harmoniously with them. So, in conclusion, I would say that the Confucius thought about minorities is relativistic in nature, or we can find the elements of cultural relativism when he says that each person is unique and each culture is different, and the understanding among different cultures take time, and how the harmony can be brought among different fractions of society. The answer to this by Confucius is to increase the interaction, dialogue, and interdependency. And this is the conclusion of the presentation. And I think that you understood my point, which I tried to make in this presentation. And I am open for discussion and comments, and everything which I mentioned is my personal opinion. I know that people are very much sentimental nowadays when it comes to the Chinese government treatment of its ethnic minorities. But if we take a step back and try to do the reverse engineering and try to see everything through the prism of Confucius thought, many things become clear. As I mentioned, that if we look at the Confucius message is clear that the people should be treated well and people should live harmoniously. And you cannot rule the country by compromising on the rights of minorities. The only possibility to bring peace in the society is to cultivate righteousness in individuals' heart, which will ultimately bring harmony among the different fractions of society. So thank you very much once again for your attention.